Thank you. Good evening. I am calling to order the November 19th, 2024 Fountain City Council meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rick.
Here.
Councilmember Hinton. Here. Councilmember Applegate.
Here.
Councilmember Estes.
Here.
Councilmember Hersberg.
Here.
Councilmember Duncan.
Present.
I have 7 members present.
Thank you very much. All right, that takes us on to item 4.1, presentations. The first presentation is Fountain Creek Watershed District. We have Abba, Ben, and it says and Tamara.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council.
Can you lean real close to the microphone?
Okay. I just want to take this opportunity to give you a status report on the Southmore project. As a reminder, this is a Fountain Creek Watershed District project with some funding contributions by the City of Fountain. I'll cover that a little later. As you can see on the board, in case you're not familiar with the project, it is right next to Southmore Drive, across from Camping World, and right adjacent to the American Legion, which is north of our Fleet and Streets Department. On the right-hand side, you could see the vertical bank that's adjacent to a section of Southmore Road, which we had to close as a result of this. I don't know, I think it's probably a 70, 80-foot drop. One thing that's important to mention is this drone photo was taken a few months ago, and since that time, it has inched itself closer to the roadway. The roadway hasn't failed yet, but it is in imminent danger. So finally, this project's coming to a head. Next slide, please, Bezzy. Really, this is a channel repair project. It's just to address, looks like that slide is missing some information. There we go. To address the scour as the creek moves and that water hits the bottom of the embankment, it scours that out, and when it eats that material away, then that material from the embankment, what we call mass wasting or sloughing, into the creek. And that's been happening for quite a while, but it came to a head a couple years ago, and the decision to close the road was important for us and the community for safety. As I said, in April of 20, we had to close down Southmore, and it's been closed ever since. Next slide, please. The project goal: realign the channel, move that channel away from the roadway and that embankment. They're going to put a stable grade, a flatter slope, and it's going to be vegetated. That'll help with erosion from rain and such. But the key is the base of the embankment. There's going to be some energy dissipation measures in place, riprap to slow down that water. And there's going to be riprap, which is very large stone, placed along that tow embankment. Originally, it was designed as an earthen slope repair with some what they call tow wood, which is really big long trees stuck in the side of the bottom of the embankment. But everybody felt that just added security to put in some riprap at the base of that. As far as Southmore Drive goes, as I mentioned, it's real close proximity to it. If the contractor, there's no plans currently right now to reconstruct Southmore Drive because it has not failed. However, during construction, when the contractor decides if he's going to access it from the top at some point or stage, put in equipment, they may have to, and that'll be an expense to the contractor, not the City of Fountain. Next slide, please. We had 3 bids come in, and 2 of them, Wholesome and Total Terrain, were very close. Normally, you would pick the low bidder. in this case, decided to go with the second lowest bidder, Total Terrain, because they had more experience and they had better answers for how they were going to approach the project. The difference, as I said, was, well, it was $890,000, and Total Terrain's bid was about 15% higher than Wholesome's number, their bid. Next slide, please. Got it. As you're probably aware, the ARPA funds, $600,000 from the city of Fountain, are being invested, or the project is being funded in part by that $600,000. As I said before, Total Terrain was selected. They had, after the bidding, the district came up with some questions and found out that there was a stronger approach and they had more experience, so that's why they were chosen. As I said before, the riprap was to increase stability, and it was an alternate to the base bid. So the base bid was for Total Terrain about $5 or $6.2 million, and they added that $476,000 as extra insurance, so that don't have to come in and do that again. Next slide, please. The notice to proceed was issued November 11th. They plan on starting any day now. Actually, I just found out today that they are planning on mobilizing some equipment and putting in some big 60-inch RCP storm pipes to help divert that water as they need to move around in the channel and construct things, and then they'll shift it around. Should be ending construction in June of 2025. That's the goal, weather and permitting. Next slide, please. City engineering, what we're doing, we've been pretty actively involved in this from the start. One thing we're doing right now is there's a public meeting. It's actually scheduled on December 9th. Just found that out today. And we're going to tell the community and have some pictures and slides and basically just make ourselves available to answer any questions the citizens may have. To help reduce the cost, Abba and myself, Deputy City Engineer Abba, she's going to be exploring some value engineering options. Value engineering is basically taking what has been designed and figuring out with a group effort how we can make it more efficient, shorter timeline, and cheaper. That's the goal. Projects like this that have been, that are a lot higher than they were assumed to be. I believe the estimate from the engineer was $4.4 million. And if you add in that $476,000, still way below where we're at now. And that's just how the bids came in. Construction now, prices are going up and really have no control over that. We're thankful that we had at least 3 bids for the project. And there has been a couple property owners that we've been working with. One in particular, the Mackeys, had some reservations about working on their property. And we have a relationship with him and we've been working real close. And he could have stopped the project because it was partially on his property, but he is very willing. He sees the benefit of it moving forward. And as far as Southmore, as far as opening that up, we want to see how the improvements react to storms. We want to make sure before we just open it up on day one that it's stable. There hasn't been any changes to the soil. The construction was done in a good way. So we're going to see. So we're not promising to open it up anytime soon, but once it's done, we're going to be keeping our eye on it and making sure that doing what it's supposed to. Next slide. And do you have any questions?
All right, thank you. Real quick question. You said the public meeting, New Jerusalem Church, December 9th. What time?
December 9th. I do not have a time right now.
Evening?
Yes, it's in the evening.
Okay.
Do you happen to know, Abba, what, 6 p.m.? 6 p.m.
Okay, 6 p.m. Great, thank you. All right, and we'll be sure and get that out. City,
The watershed was sending out cards to everybody in the area.
Okay, but also on social media? Okay, perfect. Okay, questions from anybody up here?
When that meeting goes out, can you send me an email of that? I don't know if you have anything that's like postable on social media or anything like that. I'd like to also
Yeah.
inform people too from my neighborhood as well, so.
Absolutely.
Your neighborhood will be, the Fountain Creek Watershed District is sending out postcards to everybody in the area.
And I'm assuming it would go on the city regular Facebook page, and then you can just share it around?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all righty. I just want to make sure everybody understands the 600,000, that's the ARPA funds, is restricted, and we were really super restricted, and water projects is one of the things that could be used on. Is that some of these
That
monies?
is correct, yes.
Right, so we couldn't use it on a bunch of other stuff. Okay,
It depends.
right.
If it fits in a box, there's different
Yeah.
places, but this was a good opportunity to use those funds for this project. I'm
Okay.
convinced.
All right, anybody in the audience have any questions?
I'll add on, because I'm
Okay.
the current president of the Fountain Creek Watershed District Board for another month, 2 months. This project has been long coming. It was rising to the top of the project list, and they would change the criteria and it would get bumped down. And so we're finally getting this done. And I want to say thank you to Abba and Ben for helping us with selecting those contractors and doing the reviews, because that's been very important to make sure that this project does not fail after the first flood. There's no guarantees on them, but that it really is important that we have good engineering review, and I really thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Tamara, remind me, is this the first project outside of this county of
Yes.
Pueblo?
This is the first official Fountain Creek Watershed District project in El Paso County. This is, the money from this, the main money from this comes from the suit from when Pueblo County and City of Pueblo sued Colorado Springs over the stormwater. And there was $50 million put in the pot to do projects. And Pueblo County, the district is made up of the 2 counties, and Pueblo County always made sure all the projects were done. In Pueblo County, which doesn't make sense in watershed, you should start at the top and go down, but they like to appease the people in Pueblo County. So this is the first one in El Paso County. We might get one more because we're getting down to the bottom of the barrel of the money. So, but it's the first one. The district has contributed and done some stuff, but they have not paid for anything in El Paso County till this.
Well, thank you so hard for your work on that, too. Because I know it's, that battle started back with previous Councilmember Lauer,
Yeah.
trying to do it. So thank you for continuing that fight and getting that project up here. Thank you. Okay. I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben and Abba, for all your hard work on it. Really, really appreciate it. All righty. That takes us on to the next item, a proclamation declaring November 30th, 2024 as Small Business Saturday. Mr. Blankenship, you are the president or chair or whatever they are calling it of the chamber?
I am. I serve as the city's representative to the Fountain Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I am currently serving as the role of president for the Chamber of Commerce.
Right. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. And a lot of us know for every $1 you spend in a local business, we usually put about 10 back into the community because we're all investing back into the community, helping out with various things around. And I asked Councilmember Rick if you would read that proclamation into the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A proclamation declaring November 30th, 2024 as Small Business Saturday. Whereas Small Business Saturday was founded by American Express in 2010, officially co-sponsored by the U.S. Small Business Administration since 2011, and celebrated by the City of Fountain since 2016, and whereas Small Business Saturday encourages Americans across the country to support local small businesses that infuse money into our local economies, promote vibrant and diverse communities, and play a critical role in the local and national economy, and whereas in 2023, the reported spending in the United States from those who shopped in small businesses on Small Business Saturday was approximately $17 billion. And whereas, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, there are 33.2 million small businesses in the United States, accounting for roughly 40% of the United States gross domestic output, which equates to trillions of dollars of economic activity. And whereas more than 9 out of 10 consumers in the United States agree that it is important for people to support small businesses that they value in their community. And whereas the city of Fountain contains roughly 170 brick and mortar small businesses contributing around 730 total jobs in the local economy. And whereas the city established the Economic Development Commission to promote economic well-being, diversification, and resiliency in support of its annual Small Business Week proclamation. And whereas over the past 5 years, the City of Fountain has attracted 25 new businesses, among which are general retail services, while several contribute to emerging industries such as health and medical, hospitality, automotive sales, parts, entertainment. And whereas in 2023, the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center featured 6 small businesses in Fountain as a part of their Small Business Saturday promotional marketing campaign. And whereas Fountain Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center, and the Old Town Steering Committee joined the City of Fountain in celebrating the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday in support of our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our all-American community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City of Fountain hereby declares November 30th, 2024 as Small Business Saturday. Done this 19th day of November 2024, City of Fountain, Colorado, Sharon Thompson, Mayor.
Thank you very much for reading that into the record. And for anybody within listening distance, please go shop, like he said, I think he said 270 businesses within the town and 30 new ones. So go out and shop small businesses because it helps us tremendously and it helps those small businesses trying to stay in business. So thank you very much. And thank you if you're a small business owner. So thank you. All righty. And that takes us on to item 4.2, Board, Commission, and Committee reports. Appointments, we have none tonight. Correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. Mr. Trainer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a couple quick items. One of them is to let everyone know, reminder that we have the Christmas tree lighting coming up this Friday evening at 6 p.m. right out here in front of City Hall. That's always a really fun event for families. And then and by the way, we do that coloring contest with the different elementaries around and had a ton of submittals. So it's been kind of fun looking at those. And then I wanted to also pass on, since Todd's not here, that we did get some information from the railroad. I wanted to make sure I passed it on here that it looks like this Thursday, Indiana and Ohio will be targeted by the railroad to do their work. And it looks like on the 25th, it'll be Comanche and Duckwood. So just want to pass it on so people are aware. Thursday looks like Indiana and Ohio, and the 25th is Comanche and Duckwood. Thank you.
They better have it open for Thanksgiving. Oh, okay. I'm still writing down. Okay. Grace, anything tonight?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay.
Just wanted to say thanks again on behalf of the Chamber for your support of small business and the Chamber members in this community. Other than that, I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Christie? Nothing tonight. Either chief?
No, ma'am, nothing for public safety, thank you.
Okay. Joni?
Nothing for me either, thank you.
IT?
Glad to report, nothing to report, ma'am.
No report. IT really ran all over town tonight, literally, to get us apart for the camera to get things working tonight. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. All righty. Councilmember Rick.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Just a reminder, starting this Friday on November 22nd, the Pikes Peak International Raceway is having a Magic of Lights event. It's in the evening. You can take your little loved ones out and drive through a course that will have all sorts of Christmas-themed lights out there. It's a really good time. You can buy tickets online. Again, it is from Friday, November 22nd, and runs through Saturday, January 4th. So I will be taking my grandson out there this weekend and encourage others to do so. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yep, we've got our tickets to do it too. So thank you. Councilmember Applegate.
Dan, I'm surprised you didn't bring this up. The Chamber, Fountain Valley Chamber, is doing their Christmas party Saturday. So, and that's also at Pikes Peak International Raceway, 6 to 10. I know I got an invite, so I will be there. And I'm glad to see they're putting on an event like that. So very cool.
Thank you. Councilmember Estes.
I have nothing this evening.
Councilmember Hinton.
I have nothing this evening.
Councilmember Hertzberg.
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Duncan.
Todd is not here, but I just want to say thank you to the roads committee, the roads crew, because I went to Todd and talked to him about Monterey Way, and it was a complete dig out. You can not drive on the right side of the road. And, you know, Todd works really hard for our city, and I'm just sorry he's not here, but I hope he's listening because he does really good work for us, and there's nothing I've ever brought to Todd that he hasn't gotten fixed. So to him and the road crew, give them kudos. It was on the news that the state of Colorado is implementing a law that will charge anyone who is, caught with their phone in their hand while driving in attempts to decrease the number of crashes in the state. And this is a hands-free law that will start on January 1, 2025. So just want to mention that for everyone. LEAP program, if anyone is having problems with paying on their heating bill, you can there's low-income energy assistance with LEAP, and you can call the LEAP line at 1-866-HEAT-HELP, and you can apply over the phone. And also just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and that's all I have.
Heat help. That's too many numbers. I guess it works. All righty. Very creative on somebody's part for that. Okay, had a big PPCG meeting. The big thing with PPCG this month was we are releasing for public comment the active transportation plan. The difference between a transportation plan that talks about roads and different things is an active transportation plan. It's kind of talking about things where you're actually not sitting in the car. Apparently sitting in the car and driving is passive. I didn't realize that, but active is out, you're running, you're biking, you're riding an e-bike, your scooter or whatever. So it's a plan to try to make our trails and different things a little bit more connected regionally, so that when we call it Easy Trail in Fountain, it means the same thing up in El Paso County that it means down here. So people aren't surprised. Because I had that happen one time. I took my kids on an easy trail and ended up carrying them on a cliff. So we had to make sure that all the terminologies are correct and together. So that's about it, because we only had a week between meetings, and that takes us on to public to be heard. If there is anybody in the audience that has not filled out a white card for public to be heard, please take a moment and fill one out now and hand it up to the police officer in the back, and we'll make sure it gets up here, because I have one. And so I have the one from Connie Weisenhunt. So if Connie, you'll come down and state your name for the record, and it says proposed resolution. And make sure, there you go.
Connie Weisenhunt. I do get 5 minutes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just checking, refreshing myself. My name is Connie Weisenhunt. Good evening. I am the owner and operator of Connie's Cupboard, which is a retail / thrift store, something for everyone. In the process, over the last 3 years, and I am closing, my last day will be December 28th due to a lack of funding. All of my funding comes from my personal jobs, and I clean for a huge construction company in the evening. I clean their model homes. So that's where my funding comes from. My personal money goes to this community. So I would like to share with you a little bit about what I do at Connie's Cupboard. So I provide food to the community. I usually put it outside, but most of the time people come and they take all of it. So I've been leaving it inside, and you just come in and tell me what you want. I give you bags and you shop. If you need rent assistance and it's something I can manage, I will call your landlord and I will pay with the store debit card over the phone to get your rent caught up. If you need utility assistance and it's something that I can afford, I will call the utility company and I will pay with the store debit card to keep your utilities on. If it's something that I cannot afford, I continue to educate and teach people where to go for those resources. So yesterday, actually, we had 100 residents who had their utilities shut off. Today, I had an elderly lady come to me, and she had her utilities shut off yesterday for $122. On top of that, she's $245 behind, and on top of that, on Monday, we'll have a $400 balance due. So I have come to the city council meetings to educate myself, to learn about the budget, and to learn where all of these millions and millions and millions of dollars that get granted or funded or the city has, where those monies go. And I have learned that the Fountain Utilities has a resource that is available to the community. And I called the city of Fountain today, the utility company, and those funds were not available because they are ran and gifted by the Salvation Army, which was closed today. So this was a need my electricity on kind of thing today. No time to go to LEAP, although I work with the supervisors there and I have the applications available and you can apply online, but I had multiple other people in the store with resources that were needed: blankets, jackets, food, socks, shoes, a restroom to use, because most of my people cannot use a restroom in the public facilities in this town because some of them are homeless. So my store was packed with needs. People taking a nap on the floor because I don't have below zero to let people sleep overnight, and I don't have the staffing for it either. We don't have a shelter in Fountain. I don't have the ability to drive everybody to the shelter in Colorado Springs. But back to today. The utility company was unable to help me get that funding for this elderly lady. The LEAP application is not able to be filled out for immediate resolution today. No phone was available for her. I had my phone, but like I said, I had other guests I was attending to. So she didn't have a phone of her own to fill out that application. I paid the $122. Somehow it was brought to perhaps the mayor's attention, and the mayor called the utility company, and they called me asking how they could help. I said, well, I can give you her address. You can knock on her door. You can give her a ride to Salvation Army, because come Monday, she'll have $400 that'll be due that she'll be unable to pay. Well, we don't do that. Okay, well, that's what I do. So I will be picking her up, and I will be driving her to the Salvation Army to try to help her fill out the paperwork. I just want to let everybody know, if you don't know, that we have a lot of people really, really struggling in our city. And I know that maybe you're not all aware of it. I deal with it daily, and I'm closing December 28th, and I'm not sure where everybody's going to go and what everybody's going to do, and I'm sure they'll figure it out. But it's really sad for me to think about it, because these are my people and I worry about them. Today I come to you and I ask, how can we and are we able to make some kind of resolution that our seniors and our people who are low income do not get their utilities shut off from the first snow, which is usually around October 31st, to the last snow, which is usually around March 31st. I don't know the ins and outs of how to ask for this, but I think that that is something that our low-income, poor, and elderly people in the city of Fountain, Colorado need help with.
Thank you. So I am going to give staff a chance to respond because I want to make sure everybody understands how it works when we have utilities. And I know we've said many, many, many times up here, if you're having trouble paying your utilities, please get in contact with the utilities department before, you get where it's getting to the point where it's going to be turned off. Dan, if you could go ahead and just...
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd just like to say thank you to Ms. Weisenhunt for helping this customer to resolve this issue. We send out disconnect notices for non-payment approximately 2 weeks before the disconnect is scheduled to occur. So in this particular case, a notice was generated and sent out on October 31st for a disconnect on 11/14, which didn't actually occur until yesterday, 11/18. We have existing provisions in our customer service rules and regulations with regard to cold weather. So if the temperature the day of the cutoff, if the high temperature the day of the cutoff is going to be 32 degrees or below, we do not cut off. And then we move to the next day and we continue on that. So I checked to make sure that we were properly following our own rules. Found out that yesterday the high temperature was 60 degrees and today it was 39. I also took a step further and took a look at seeing what the Colorado Public Utilities Commission does with regard to their rules and regulations on cutoff. We, as a municipal utility, by state constitution, are not under the jurisdiction of the PUC. However, that does not mean that we cannot look to them for guidance. And so I took a look at their policy. Their policy for cutoff is a little bit different and is actually more focused on the hours of 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. On the next day, the forecast temperature. On the surface, that looks like it may benefit our customers more to possibly follow that policy. And so we are going to take a closer look at that. And if it is determined that will help our customers and be more beneficial to them, per the city code, I have the authority as the utilities director to promulgate rules and regulations to administer the code. So I can do that myself. That's something that we're going to look at immediately. And like I said, if it appears on the surface that it could be, because quite frankly, I took a look at the weather data and applied the PUC rules, and if we had the PUC rules in place, we would not have done the disconnect yesterday, and we would not have done the disconnect today. We have a financial and fiduciary responsibility as a municipal utility. We are defined by the state constitution as an enterprise, and an enterprise is a municipally owned business. We have an obligation to operate as a business. But we have, the great thing about this is we can have this kind of interaction face to face at this level, and so we can be much more responsive when situations like this arise. We have many opportunities for assistance, and unfortunately in this situation, it was something that occurred at the last minute, and we were not in a position because of the agencies that assist us, and in particular the Salvation Army, and which are closed on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We funnel the money that we collect as our lighten the load. We funnel that money to them so that it's an independent third party that is making those determinations. So we're not making determinations and could be accused of being biased in our determinations. So we have a third party partner that has criteria that they follow to assist. So I will look at that. We will, like I say, if it's in the benefit of our customers to make some modifications, I will do that and report back to you. And again, Ms. Weisenhunt, I thank you very much for your service to our customers and our community.
Dan, could you explain how Lighten the Load gets funded and what happened during COVID to some of those lighten the load funds?
Yes, the lighten the load is actually a portion of fees that are collected through our utilities. So there's a number of fees that we collect. And so when the lighten the load program was established, a percentage of those fees are set aside into a separate account for lighten the load. And then furthermore, during COVID, the city was given an allocation of ARPA funds. And as the council made the decision to allocate those ARPA funds, a portion of those ARPA funds were allocated specifically to lighten the load. Now that's funding that we provide out of revenues from our own ratepayers, but we have a list of others, not only the LEAP program, but there's other programs out there. And so what we try to do is encourage our partners to use those other funding sources first, because sometimes those then run low and then move to the lighten the load.
And can anyone donate to lighten? Can anyone donate to lighten the load? Is there a way to do that? I know it used to be you could do it right on your bill.
That is possible. I would have to check for sure. I don't know that absolute answer to that question.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Hinton?
I think Gordon was first.
Oh,
It's okay.
Okay.
So just a quick question, Dan. So when you send out a notice, is it just the notice, and is it followed up with a phone call to the individual customer stating that? Because some people don't check their mail, and I understand that they may know that they're late on their bill, but do they know the urgency that their potentially utilities will get cut off?
I don't know that we do a follow-up phone call, but in this particular instance, as I've learned, this individual doesn't even have a telephone.
Okay.
So even if we tried to call her and notify her, we wouldn't have been able to.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Rick?
Yes, Ms. Weisenhunt, I want to make sure I understood you. You said something about 100 people per day got their, did I?
100 people yesterday
100
were
people.
disconnected.
100 people yesterday. Dan, is that seems like a lot to me. Is that a typical?
Yeah, that's probably below what the typical numbers are. Unfortunately, we've had situations where individuals, for a variety of reasons, do not pay their bills. And as I indicated, we have an obligation to, because we're a cost of service utility. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't collect that money from the customers who consume those services, then we have to spread that cost to the remainder of the customers.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, and I guess this is for Scott and Devin. A couple years ago when I first came on council, Chief Heber briefed us on our homeless situation and said that if we had homeless people that were found in Fountain, that we were supposed to either take them or tell them to go to Fire Station 1, and that Fire Station 1 would then contact a shelter or somebody in Colorado Springs who would come down and get them. Is that still the case, and how is that working?
Scott, I've got maybe an answer to that. Commander Racine reminded me that Fountain Police Department has one-way bus passes up to the Springs Rescue Mission on a limited basis, so they'd be in extreme circumstances or very similar to this elderly lady that needed some transportation. We do have bus passes for that. I hadn't heard the Fire Station 1 situation, but we'd make it work either way, whether they went to FD or whether they went to PD. We do have some transportation options, and we'll always try to figure out something.
We've actually done Uber as well.
Okay, as long as we have a system that people know of, that we know what it is, whether it's FD, whether it's PD, whether it's whatever. I just want to make sure we're communicating that, especially now. We're in November, we're in the cold season. I want to make sure we get that word out, please.
Well, and Grace just reminded me, because code enforcement has so much contact with them, that they also will take them up there.
Okay, whatever the system is, I just want to make sure we're getting the word out. Thank you.
I want to remind people, we have a bus that actually, we have a MOU with Mountain Metro that we cross over the railroad tracks on Main, thank you. I didn't want to say the wrong street. Main Street, and drop you in Security. and drop you kind of across the street from Ross, and which for many people would get them within walking distance of the Salvation Army, and much closer than starting down here. So, and we did that because we didn't want people going back and forth over the train tracks, wanting to come shop or getting to health services or something. So, sounds to me like we got some options. Sounds to me like Dan's got some different ideas he's going to be looking at possibly implementing. But like he said, when he says cost for service utility, that means we're not for profit. So we run a very slim margin. And so we're not like some of the bigger utilities that have a lot of money laying around in different programs. And if you'd like to write up your resolution, I'm sure Dan would be willing to look at it, because we're always taking ideas from citizens. But it would take a lot of thought and input, because essentially we're asking the rest of the citizens of the community to pick up the cost for the months that some people aren't paying. So just lots of things to think about. Thank you,
Okay,
Connie.
thank you.
Thank you. Right. All right, that is the end of the cards that I have. And so that takes us on to consent agenda. All items listed under consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately at the discretion of council. We have one item on consent agenda tonight, item 7A, approval of the November 12th, 2024 Fountain City Council minutes. What council like to do? Councilmember Estes.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Councilmember Hinton.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further deliberation or corrections? Seeing none, please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, that takes us on to item 8A, old business. Second reading of ordinance 1808, an ordinance of the City of Fountain repealing and reordaining Chapter 17.6 of Title 17 of the Fountain Municipal Code to other uses regulated regarding natural medicine businesses, and add natural medicine business to permitted use, and amending Chapter 17.04 zoning district, Section 17.04, 150B, Planned Industrial District Use Regulations of the Fountain Municipal Code. Ms. Williams and Ms. Martinez, up once again.
Good evening, Christy Martinez with the Planning Department. This is the second reading of Ordinance 1808. As part of the motion on first reading, there were two amendments to the ordinance that was presented during the meeting previously, which was to increase the distance from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet from child care centers, preschool, schools, residential child care facilities, collectively known as schools, and also to increase it to 1,500 for properties used or zoned for single-family dwellings, duplexes, or multifamily dwellings, collectively as residential, and to include the addition of residential dwellings within the computation of the direct measurements. It was requested by council staff to prepare maps to kind of show what that buffer would look like between the 1,000 feet and the 1,500 feet. So this first map that's on the screen is, I believe, 1,500 feet. Okay, good. Even with my glasses, I can't even see that. That's 1,000 feet. So as we had previously mentioned, the areas that would be compliant with the statutory requirements would primarily be along the western boundary of I-25. I don't have a pointer, but in the purple areas are all the areas that are zoned the planned industrial. There is a large swath of land along that area that would comply with the 1,000 feet, along with the northern boundary on the east side of I-25 at the far north end of Banley Drive. There is a small pocket of some area along the southern side of Banley Drive, south of Highway 16, that may comply with that 1,000-foot buffer. It would really depend on each individual lot. The next map, which will show the 1,500 foot, not that one, the other one. Does show the 1,500 foot buffer, which was included in the amended ordinance based upon the motion made at the previous meeting. It would still apply to the same areas, so the difference between the 1,000 feet, which would be complementary to the state statute requirements, and the 1,500 feet are negligible. It doesn't exclude any additional land between the two distance requirements. There was discussion at the previous meeting about being reasonable in terms of ensuring that we are not excluding intentionally any of these facilities from our jurisdiction based upon the limitations imposed by that statute. And with that, I will turn it over to Grace.
Seeing one map and then seeing the other, can we put them side to side, or can they overlay each other, or?
So while we're doing that, I'll just do a quick recap of our legal requirements for this ordinance. The state has severely limited our ability to, add additional restrictions to this. So we are restricted to time, place, and manner restrictions. So we are, regulating the time by saying that these businesses can only operate between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., which obviously is different than most businesses in Fountain, and when they're able to, and only on Monday through Friday. The state statute provides the limitation of 1,000 feet from childcare facilities. We're also adding that restriction to residential areas as well. Since there's not a large difference in the amount of distance, a lot of conservative approaches would say we should really stick with the 1,000 feet limitation, just because it shows that we're staying consistent with state statute. We're not opening ourselves up to a lawsuit. However, I don't know that the 1,500 feet is going to be deemed unreasonable based on the changes in these maps, and as you can see how close together they are. So that is kind of a decision that we want to make. Obviously, we wouldn't be the most extreme jurisdiction with 1,500 feet, but a lot of jurisdictions are choosing to stick with the 1,000 just to be square within that, as all vice businesses pretty much are at 1,000 feet already, like our adult-oriented businesses and other businesses that have had U.S. Supreme Court constitutional challenges are at that 1,000 feet mark. And now we are open for questions, comments, concerns.
Okay, Councilmember Applegate, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had two, actually. So can we, just for the record, can we go over manner? So like, say I go to a license, like somebody goes to a licensed dealer. Can we go over the process of that so the public knows just how this thing works?
Sure. So the manner restrictions are really highly regulated in the regulations that the state did put forth. So basically what they have is called a healing session, which they have to pay for. And so that's under the supervision of someone with a degree that's related to health and human services. There's a huge variety of those. That person will be the facilitator. They will take them into this healing session. They will distribute the amount of psilocybin or that substance that they have available based on what they think is the proper dosage for that person, ideally based on the training that they have, which is why they're supposed to be restricted to one of these areas. They will administer that dose to them, and then they're supposed to keep them there in that session, do something therapeutic with them at the same time, and then not release them from that session until they believe that they're safe and within their, capacities to return back to, regular life in the public.
Is there a way to test that sobriety? Do they know, like on hand, or no?
Not that I'm aware of.
Just once you stop tasting colors and chasing the pink dragon?
Right. I mean, ideally, that's their expertise area. I'm not sure that that's, since it has been, a Schedule I drug for so long, that we have that capability of, like we do with, other substances.
Okay. I guess two other questions. And so this,
We give two and then give somebody else a chance, and then we'll come back to you.
sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hurst, okay. And
So I'm along of Councilman Applegate's question about, when you say license, is this a doctor or a person that just has a certification to be able to?
So there's no specific certification for administering this medicine at this time, or this type of natural medicine at this time. Doctors are authorized to be one of the providers of it, but it's much more broad than that. It can be a licensed therapist. It could even be someone who has practiced this in Oregon for an extended period of time and shown that they have a lot of, that's probably the least restrictive way that you can become a facilitator is if you can show that experience from when they had passed in Oregon, and then the most restrictive is like MD, those types of things are able to be that, but it's a broad array of occupations that qualify.
So they are whatever they're administered in that facility and watch for a time period and then deem whatever person deems them clear of that, whatever they took is clear to go outside those doors and get in a car and do whatever, right?
I'm not sure that they're really clearing them to get in a car necessarily. I don't know that they have to make that determination.
But they are clearing them from whatever drug that they're using, saying that they're good to go, and then they can step outside that door and get in whatever vehicle and go on the roads. Is that what
I mean, I don't think they can specifically say who can get behind the wheel of a car because you could potentially be another way. I don't think that they are required to investigate how they got to the facility, but they are supposed to show that they are safe to return to whatever, life they're doing outside of that.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Hertzberg?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank staff for being so quick about pulling this information together. And so based on,
Jennifer, could you lean forward a little bit?
sorry.
Thank you.
Based on the analysis, we don't see any significant benefit in increasing the space. However, by leaving it at the 1,000, we may be protecting ourselves in part by looking like we're more compliant with what the state has said. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So given that, yeah, I'm fine with the 1,000, I guess. Thanks.
I'm fine with the 1,500, if it's not a big difference. Councilmember Rick, and then we'll come back to Councilmember Applegate.
Just a quick one. The facilitator, it's my understanding that the state decides who is qualified to be a facilitator. Nobody in the county and nobody in the city of Fountain makes that determination. Is that correct?
So not as we have the ordinance written. I think it's possible that we could add potentially a local license for that on top of it, kind of like we have for tobacco and alcohol and things like that. But right now, the state is the one only licensing at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Applegate?
Yeah. So I guess the question, so like a home-based childcare facility, like somebody's running in home like preschool or whatever, is that considered under the sensitive spaces or no?
So in this case, they are defining it's not the same sensitive spaces that's usually used in kind of like gun control legislation, but they do have it. I'm not sure if that's within the.
If it's a home-based childcare, it would be within a residence, which would fall within our distance requirements of the residential uses. So regardless of whether it's licensed by the state or not, it would fall under that residential dwelling.
Okay. And then what about, so like, say you've got a heavy populated area where you have lots of children, like you have an apartment building, you have somewhere like this. This is a question I've gotten from my constituents. Mm-hmm. What are the stipulations with that? Because at this point, I mean, the way it's written, you can grow the bed 12 by 12. Cousin Carl can have it in his backyard and everybody can see it, entire neighborhood. But what about even the licensed dealers too at the same time? Like what about, they've got it right next to like a huge apartment complex and you've got a lot of children running around. And maybe you have a school, but maybe it's exactly, 1,600 feet away.
Yeah, so I mean, it's still going to have to be 1,000 or 1,500 feet away from all residences or childcare facilities, no matter if it's a multifamily dwelling or a single-family residence. The agricultural licenses for, it's not actually called that, so it's bothering me that I'm not using the right term, so I'm sorry about that. But those facilities have their own specific requirements of being in these planned industrial zones, and they have some pretty strict regulations on how they're supposed to secure the property. Unfortunately, the residential 12 by 12 spaces are pretty much, fairly free reign. I would say an apartment complex can probably say our customers are not entitled to specific spaces within our complex for growth. You can say there's no gardening in our complex, right? But other than that, it would kind of be up to them to do that.
Councilmember Hinton?
So I had to make sure I just got this right in my head for my own edification. So the 1,000 is the minimum, if approved, we're asking for 1,500, so 500 additional feet. Is there any blowback to us if we add on that additional 500 from the state coming? What would be the repercussions?
Yeah, so there's no guaranteed repercussions. It's just if someone chose to sue us and say, we think this is, unconstitutionally restrictive or doesn't fit within the reasonableness requirement of the state. So it's kind of like our best analysis on what that distance is. So we can make arguments for further out. I think that's possible. We do have to be really careful that we don't get to the point where we're restricting the land so much that we don't have very much available at all. I will say one thing that we looked at is that these areas are pretty undeveloped at this point that are already available, and so potentially the closer we put that in, the more completely undeveloped land there is, which obviously there's pros and cons to that, but that is potentially an argument that someone could make about the areas of land that are accessible.
And just one more, just for the public, if not passed tonight, the state can come in and then say where they want it to go regardless without us approving this tonight. Is that the case?
So the state requirements do not include a residential restriction, so then they could go, within 1,000 feet of a residence. They do have the 1,000 feet of a childcare facility in the state law, so that would technically be in place regardless of what we do tonight. But yes, there would be definitely a lot more, the planned industrial use, it wouldn't be limited to that, so there would be a lot more space open in the city to that.
All right, thank you.
So your next door neighbor? Yeah. If we don't pass anything? Yeah, okay. All right, any more questions from council?
I'd also like
Hertzberg.
to add some clarification from Commander Racine for the personal residents. The grows can't occur in their backyard. It would have to be locked and enclosed within their personal residence and away from anybody under the age of 18. So you couldn't put it in a greenhouse in your backyard, even though it's locked. There are some restrictions in place stipulated by the state for those types of.
Oh, okay,
of the
thank you for
personal.
that clarification. Okay, thank you. Councilmember
Go ahead,
Hertzberg's up.
Actually, that was one of my questions, so thank you, because initially I was thinking the greater concern is the backyards that could be accessible to just anyone. This whole topic is somewhat new to me. I've done a little bit of reading on it, but as far as someone having a treatment and then being released, similar in a way to someone having drinks and leaving, is there a greater risk to this type of activity as opposed to other activities like going to a bar? I mean, the bartenders don't have you blow into something before before you leave. So is this comparable in any way? Just so I can understand.
Well, I think
Could you identify yourself?
Commander Racine, Fountain Police Department. I think it'd probably be a little more comparable going to a pain clinic or going to the hospital where you're administered any type of narcotic. They do wheel you out, but nobody does check you to make sure that you're okay to drive. And just like anything else, just like with going to the bar, going to the hospital, going to a pain clinic, going to a place where you can consume recreational marijuana or medicinal marijuana, it's going to depend on each individual. It's going to be the amount they consume, and then everything will be based off of driving actions, and then ultimately standard field sobriety tests administered by somebody who's certified to do so, to be able to show that that person is showing that they are under the influence or that they are incapable of driving due to intoxication from whatever it is.
Thank you.
Sorry, the air conditioning vent's like right above me.
Oh, I'm not sure who's next. Councilmember Estes, you haven't asked any questions?
This is not, I'm looking online, just because it concerns me on who's prescribing this stuff. And this is according to the Department of Colorado. Do I need a Colorado secondary license to apply to be a clinical facilitator? Yes, you must be a current valid Colorado secondary license. And what qualifies that is a psychologist, a licensed social worker, a licensed clinical social worker, marriage and family therapist, licensed professional counselor, licensed addiction counselor, medical doctor, doctor of osteopathic medicine, advanced practice nurse, nurse practitioner, and physician assistant. They are required to take 150 hours of training to be eligible to get the licensure. There is also a way to get it to become a natural medicine clinical facilitator by endorsement. The applicant must hold a valid Colorado license in their secondary field and a valid Oregon facilitator license from Oregon that they have held and is in good standing for 1 year. So there are some requirements on who can prescribe this stuff, because that was concerning me that we're going to have people coming in off the street doing this.
Councilmember Hinton?
So I just want to go back to Commander Racine's question about a pain clinic. It's kind of similar to a pain clinic. For me, I go in and I get shots in my back, right? And if I have to go under anesthesia, they tell me I must have a ride. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it if I go into anesthesia. If I don't, then I could leave on my own, of my own free will. So I don't get the understanding, like, is it similar to a pain clinic?
Well, pain clinics, as to the type that administer, you go in, they administer any type of pain medicine. Little different than the VA, but
Oh, no,
they're.
this isn't VA, this is
Oh,
just
okay.
community care, going to get shots in my back, and if I choose to take
And
some
that's going to
anesthesia.
depend on each clinic
Yeah.
individually, because there are some that go in, they prescribe whatever medicine, people take them right there, and then they get in their car and leave.
Right.
It's no different than going to the pharmacy, being prescribed medication, and people are taking them in through the drive-through.
Okay.
It's up to the individual to know if they're in the right state of mind, or if they're intoxicated under whatever type of substance, that's going to affect their driving. No different than the bar, no different than anywhere else.
Okay, thank you.
I went to the dentist a couple weeks ago, cracked another tooth. It must be my year. Our dentist is having a good year due to us. He gave me something different, gave me a different amount, and like 5 minutes later, I'm like, you can't let me drive home. So it just depends on what it is in each, and he's like, I've never had anybody react like that before to what I gave you. So they kept me there for a little while longer. So, Councilmember Hersberg.
Sorry. Thank you, Commander, for that information, and again to staff for what they've done. And I just want to sort of recap that as a city, we don't really gain much by extending the border. However, by just leaving it as is, we could have potential protections from someone coming against us legally. So there's
Yeah.
really, okay.
That's
Just make
correct.
sure I said that.
Yes.
But you're comfortable with the 1,500 feet? Otherwise, you wouldn't be recommending it to us.
I mean, I would not say the 1,500 feet was my recommendation. I believe that it's legal,
Okay.
but I do believe that it opens us up to more risk than the 1,000 feet. So I would say my recommendation is sticking with the 1,000 feet. But I do think that there's nothing that's like, oh, we would definitely be in trouble, right? It's all about evaluating the level of risk. And I don't think that it precludes us to be at 1,500 feet where we're definitely going to get something. But I do think we are safer at the 1,000 feet.
But 1,500 feet you feel is defensible in court if you had to go to
I
court?
do feel it's
Because
defensible.
it's not that big of a difference between the two. So
Yes.
as long as it's defensible in court, because there are enough places, and it really isn't making that much of a difference. The only difference I'm concerned about is some of those residential areas that, might be 1,001 feet, away from somewhere. So give them a little bit more of a buffer. So, okay, Councilmember Hinton, your light is still on?
Yeah,
Boy, you're talkative.
I am tonight,
huh?
boy, on this subject. So, just for me, I'm okay if it's 1,500 feet, because if it is denied, we already meet the minimum requirement of 1,000 feet. I mean, they can't come back and say, well, we denied you the 1,500, so now you have to put it. If the recommendation tonight is 1,500 feet, and I understand where you're coming from. Just for me, I always like a little bit more, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and I'm fine with that.
Because you can't go the other direction. No. Because.
That's right.
Yeah, it's, goodness, you okay? Yeah. All right, Councilmember Rick?
Yeah, Grace, I'm not an attorney, don't pretend to be one. But if we make it 1,500, and if we get sued, we are essentially at the mercy of whichever judge the case falls to. Is that correct?
Pretty much, because the standard will be reasonableness, right? And so that's, kind of a loosey-goosey standard that is subjective to everyone, so.
So it's whatever the judge decides is reasonable
Right.
is what's going to decide the case. And we don't know what judge we're going to get. If we don't, first off, we don't even know if we're going to get sued.
We don't even know if someone's coming.
We don't know if anybody's coming. But if we do, we are essentially at the mercy of whichever judge we get that decides what reasonable is and isn't. And my concern is if the judge says this isn't reasonable and throws out our ordinance, then we fall back on the state ordinance, which, as Fred pointed out, somebody could put one of these right in his neighborhood, right down from his house, and then we're hosed. And that's my concern. A judge could say, no, this whole thing is unreasonable, and throw the whole thing out, and then we've got them in neighborhoods, which I don't think anybody up here wants.
No.
I don't think a judge would look at it, do you, Grace, and throw out the whole thing? Just say 1,000 feet is.
Yeah, it's really hard to say what judges will do. I've been surprised by a lot of them, but it is more common to strike out one specific area. And we do try to have a severability clause in all of our ordinances where we're saying if one part is found to be, incorrect, that it does save the rest of the parts that are not either unconstitutional or violate state law or, whatever is exactly the reason why they find it to be incorrect. So I do think that that's probably less likely, but not impossible.
So Grace, I don't want to put you in a spot. So your recommendation tonight before this council is the 1,000 feet. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I'll say I'm just more comfortable with, what's been clearly established through, U.S. Supreme Court precedent, which is 1,000 feet. Whereas, the other, I believe we legally can do it. It's not as well established. And so it just opens us up to a little bit more risk. Maybe that's my personal opinion more than anything else. But, I come from, a jurisdiction where we spent a lot of money on lawsuits that I found to be very frivolous. So that's kind of my, maybe more of a personal opinion. I'm not as good at weighing those, types of things. So I do want to be clear about that. I don't think that it's, illegal or a problem, but I do tend to think that it's better to kind of go with what's clearly there when it's not going to make a huge difference like I see in these maps.
No, and I appreciate that because you're bringing your perspective from the legal side and your expertise with that, and I appreciate you sharing that with us so that we can make the best decisions, so thank you.
Okay, any last comments from anybody up here before I open it up to anyone in the audience tonight? Anybody in the audience would like to come forward, state your name for the record, and say anything? We have our visitor here from a government class tonight, so he picked a good night to come in.
Connie Weisenhunt. Grace, last week we talked about 3 things. I only remember one of them. I wondered if you could recap it because it's been such a long conversation and folks listening, we're talking about hallucinogenic mushroom facilities having the possibility to open up like marijuana facilities and what the requirements would be in the city of Fountain. And 3 of the things, one was manor, and then, can you remind us the other 2? And then we've decided that we're just going to go ahead and try to change one of them, which was the distance tonight. But then if this isn't a final meeting, if we changed the other 2, just to make it a little bit more serious, trying to open up these kind of facilities in our city, I think it just makes people maybe think twice about how hard it is to run a business in the city, and then maybe it just takes them a different route, like Denver or Pueblo. But can you recap the other 2? Because I forgot what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry.
Again. Okay, I think I need a new battery. Time, place, and manner means we can set the time, but it has to be reasonable. So and the reason they did that because they were concerned somebody might say, you can be open from 12 to 12:30 a.m. on Tuesdays. Okay, so that's why they said time, because that's not reasonable, right? And so that's what they said it. And then manner, time, place is what we're talking about tonight. And yes, this is the final reading of this. We will be voting on this tonight, so there will not come back again. Immediately. It might come back, I mean, you can't say never, right? And then manner, Grace is time, place, manner.
Yeah, so manner, we're not really doing a lot with that in our ordinance, so it's kind of hard to give an example from our specific ordinance because the state regs are pretty specific on, but it would be like how you're doing it, right? So you're coming in for this facilitation appointment, what happens there, how can they give it to you, that kind of stuff.
Right, but I want to make sure it's understood. The facilitators, it's like a service. So, and they cannot sell the product. They have to provide it as part of the service they're providing. So we will receive 0 sales tax from this. And so that's, to me, that's an important thing to remember, is it's going to be in our community and using our services on our roads and beyond their property tax, you know. We won't be receiving any sales taxes to helping us support these businesses. And so I think what we're setting now is kind of saying, before you come, before you come, or if you choose to come, these are the guidelines in our city that we have set up. And it's not like we're driving anyone out or away. We're just saying, here's the map, this is where you should look, so that they know everything ahead of time.
Understood. Thanks for the reminder on the time manner.
Yeah. Okay, I think Mr. Arce had raised his hand before you? Sure. Okay, please come down and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Bill Garlington, and I had a couple of questions. One of them is there a limit to how many facilities will be at these properties?
No.
Okay.
These are the
What about-
restrictions the state has put on us.
I'm sorry?
These are the restrictions the state has put on us.
Okay. And what about any penalty if they violate? Let's say, for instance, they're open from 8 to 5, but they give these things and they release somebody before they should have been released, or someone comes in at 4:30, let's say. Is there a penalty if they violate it? And if there is a penalty, can they lose their license and be removed from the city of Fountain?
They would
Yeah.
have the right to a proper hearing and proper investigation like any business would in town if they were found to be in violation of, you know, not following the rules and the laws for their particular business. So, go ahead, Grace.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just gonna say that similar thing, right? There's definitely the possibility of losing their license. There's a complaint process, like she was just describing, right, that they would go through to verify all the facts and whatnot, but they are, the state should revoke license, and then criminal penalties are still on the table for, like, sale and different things like that, that are still completely illegal, that are even further than just a license revocation.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. You like to go last, huh?
No, there was a lot. Steve Arce. And so a couple of things. One, a few questions that you probably can't answer right away. So this was passed in '22. Is that accurate? And we've known this was coming for 2 years. So is there a reason why we've waited until literally the final moment before it takes effect, before we try and pass this regulatory
So
for
after
it?
this was passed, the legislature spent probably one entire session setting the rules and guidelines and regulations for how this was going to be done and be handled. And then you have to wait until those rules are all promulgated until they have time to be released. And so that was just, Christy, do you know that it took them at least a year to get
It
that
was
done?
most of 2023, so it was on the 2022 election session. And
Correct.
so November of '22, it was voted in by the constituents. '23's regulatory and legislative cycle is what went into the implementation of the amendments to the state statutes. and finally implemented it into effect in '24. So we've been working with the Colorado Municipal League, various jurisdictions on how municipalities can and can't comply with these regulations. And here we are, along with almost every other jurisdiction in the city coming forth
So we had
with
to
this.
wait till it's written, and then we have to take time to read and understand it, and see what's going to be the best.
Because it does seem like this is a very last-minute thing. But to point out a couple of things, because, again, I'm all about the science. I did not vote for it in 2022 because I was not in favor, I was not in favor of it, but I didn't know a lot. And so, especially since the last couple weeks, I've done a little bit more research. I fielded some questions from some other vet friends of mine. And so, a couple of things. One is, you did point out that the practitioners for this are, this is secondary to what they're actual licensed for. You mentioned LCSWs, LPCs, physicians, et cetera. So they've put quite a bit of time into that primary license that they hold, and they don't want to lose it. Second off is that this is a recognized treatment. They've done a lot of research into this, particularly for people dealing with anxiety disorders, PTSD, and it's a process. It's not I walk in, I buy a medical marijuana joint, I smoke it, I leave. That's actually not how the treatment works. I don't know how much research some of you have done into how the actual treatment process of it works, but it is actually a session. It's a session that's done, and there are, depending on the research that you look at, how many sessions it does, but as little as one session has shown to have a pretty statistically significant effect on anxiety disorders, particularly with veterans' PTSD. The VA is looking at this very closely. There are a number of states that are looking at legalizing it, and the VA is actually considering pushing, at least according to what I'm seeing online on their website, where it may be a treatment overall used by them. And I know we're very supportive of our veterans and our veteran community here. Matter of fact, most of the questions I fielded had absolutely nothing to do with.
No, you're fine. It just, yeah. Go ahead. It's not on, though. I think we're all, there we go.
There we go. I'm looking for the lights. Had nothing to do with going and using it at a facility, but how is this going to affect my 12 by 12 patch? And so I think that this is something to really, look at as far as, is this something that can support a very valued and cherished population that we do have here in Fountain? We talked a little bit about what does Fort Carson think about this, and although I cannot speak for them, their jurisdiction ends at their gate, and our jurisdiction ends, we know where it ends. So regardless, it's not like they're expecting or I would imagine they're not expecting a huge trafficking into the thing that is going to come from these facilities, because these facilities are looking at doing therapeutic treatment sessions, not just selling it.
They can't sell it.
Yeah, exactly. I think if anything, that would come from the private grower, which we have considerably less control over. But I think, if we're looking at, do we want to deny a viable treatment to people who specifically suffer from legitimate anxiety disorders, PTSD, et cetera? I think that's something we really want to consider when we're looking at this. And, 1,000 feet, easily defensible, 1,500. I don't have that many skills, but one of them is observing and describing behavior. And I can tell you, when you asked her, can you defend 1,500 feet or would you rather defend 1,000? I know which one that I could see was the preference. And so I think we should look at this as, we don't ever want to be seen as denying people legitimate needs for things an actual treatment that is proving to be viable, that is proving to be functional. And for the veterans on the council, what it's like trying to get into the VA at
Okay, we're not denying licenses. We're just saying, I want to make it clear for the record. We're just saying where the boundaries potentially are going to be at the end of the night. That's what we're saying. So I want everybody to understand it, that we do not have the right to deny it. The state has said you have to, if somebody chooses to come to your city, but we can set the three things, time, well, really not manner. I don't know why it says time, place, and manner, because we really can't time and place. And because, I agree with you, what they do inside is up to them. So, yeah, and following the procedures. Hang on, it went off again on you.
But I mean, I do want to be clear, it's, there's a lot of questions about what this is. And it's not, I walk in, buy a joint, and leave, walk in, buy a mushroom, and leave. It's a treatment. It's a treatment and it's a process. And these people that are getting the secondary license as practitioners have already put in an extensive amount of time, money, and effort to get their primary license, and they don't want to lose that.
Tamara, was that written in the rules and regulations that the state promulgated, or is that in the ballot measure?
I think it's in the state.
You think it's in this
Because it
rules the
was-
state
yeah, 'cause
promulgated?
that's what I found
So
out.
they can technically change those rules next year, right, Grace?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So they could change it to say, if Tamara Estes wants one,
It
right?
says- here, I'll read it. To qualify for licensure as a facilitator, clinical facilitator, or training license, an applicant must complete a facilitator training program that has been certified by the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies, Division of Professions and Occupations, and that is at least 150 hours of training, in addition to their their primary license.
Right. But that's in the rules and regulations. That was my
Yes.
question. So
Yeah.
they could go back and change those, which we've seen
Well,
them
there
do
was
before.
Yeah, there was a couple others. You have to be 21. You have to provide proof of basic life support training. You have to complete the application, pay the fee, provide proof of Colorado residency, if applicable, completion of approved facilitation training program, completion of practicum, and completion of consultation. So there are some requirements.
Councilmember Applegate?
Go ahead. No, Fred was out of me.
Okay.
Go ahead. So, yeah, I know tonight we're not discussing the actual treatment of it, and we're discussing the actual placement of it or distance of it. But I do want to address that and ask Grace, is this treatment approved by the FDA?
No, it's a Schedule I drug still and federally, so there's not really any federal,
That's when I just wanted to get that out there. Yes, it's a treatment, and yes, there's different things out there, but we're not in the direction yet where it's approved by the FDA for a viable treatment until all case studies are done and until they say, yeah, it's good to go. And I just want to make sure that as a veteran, and I deal with all those host of things, anxiety, PTSD, it's not something that's for me. I would not want to choose to do that route, and I just want to make sure that is on the record.
I do want to just echo what he did say. The VA has come out in support of these treatments. That is accurate statement, not saying that, we want to do that or whatnot, but they have put it as an area that they would like to continue to.
They can put it all they want until it gets
Sure.
approved by the FDA. They can say what they want to say.
Councilmember Applegate?
So just to give up too, so we have an idea of what this costs, the all famous dollar. I was looking on Medicine Mindfulness. This is a LLC. They have licenses in Oregon and Colorado. And $650 basically is what I'm seeing for a base rate. If I want like a 2-hour, 3-hour session, I'm north of $1,000. This isn't cheap. I'm not saying there's people in Fountain that can't afford that, but they're basically these, the people that are going to set up these facilities, they're capitalists. They're going to go where the market's at. So we also need to keep that in mind where we make our decisions. They're not going to come to Penrose or La Junta.
Well, it's
yeah.
Depends on where they're-
Corey, the decision is just if we're going to allow to have it be 1,000 or 1,500, regardless.
Right.
The decision's already been made.
Right.
We had no choice in that. That decision's already been made.
Okay. So, we can coulda, shoulda, woulda it to death, but at some point we need to make a decision, to use the words of a former mayor, right? And so I think we've had a really robust discussion from this, unless anybody else has something that they would like to throw out there tonight. So The resolution, the changes we made last week, I really appreciated it being redlined in the packet, was 1,500 feet, which we can look at the two maps, and I appreciate you, GIS and whoever took all the time to make these maps. I understand it wasn't as easy as we all thought it would be, so thank you, everybody, for putting the time into that. And it's always good to see pictures, right? So it was a good thing to see. So is there any council member that would, what would you like to do with this?
I'm going to stick my head out.
Councilmember Estes.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 1808 with the 1,000-foot limit on second reading.
Okay, is that all you would need, or, because we're not changing the other word, resident, right? We're just, she's just suggesting that one word.
That's correct. We want to keep the other
Okay,
word.
all righty. Councilman, I'm not sure who was next. Councilmember Rick?
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for ordinance number 1808 at 1,000-foot regulation. Is there any further deliberation up here? Because I'm perfectly comfortable with 1,500. I think it's defensible, but I respect everybody else's opinions. So, no further deliberation? Seeing none, please vote. We're all having trouble tonight. 6 yes? Okay. All right, thank you very much. And I want to state again, I even got quoted in the Gazette. I guess I said this enough times last meeting. This was something time and place where it can be allowed in our city. And if anyone is interested, that map will be available, right? And before you sign a lease or buy a piece of property, I would definitely check with the planning department, because they're going to have that down to a T, right? All righty. All right, thank you very much. And hang on, I lost my agenda. Is it on the floor? There we go. Got it. Just got stuck behind a piece of paper. Okay. All right. And that takes us on to item 9, new business. There is none. No, item 9A, consideration of items removed from consent agenda. There were none. Item 10, city council agenda requests. Start to my right tonight. Anybody on my right have an agenda request? Okay. Anybody on my left have an agenda request? Okay. All righty. There are no agenda requests tonight. And that takes us to the announcement of an executive session.
In accordance with the city charter and the Colorado Open Meetings Act, the city council open session is to determine whether it will hold a closed executive session. A closed executive session may be held upon affirmative vote of 2/3 of the quorum present. If consent of the closed executive session is not given, the items may be discussed in open session or withdrawn from consideration. Purpose of tonight's executive session is for the purpose of CRS Section 24-6-4024, for the purpose of review approval of amendment of executive session minutes. CRS Section 24-6-4024, for the purpose of discussing a personnel matter and not involving any specific employees who have requested discussion of the matter in open session, any member of this body or any elected official, the appointment of any person to fill an office of this body, or of an elected official or personnel policies that do not require the discussion of matters personal to particular employees.
I don't know if it matters, but when you read section 24-6-402, you said 4, but you didn't say F. I don't know if that matters or not.
I
so-
apologize. It is 4024F, for the purpose of discussing a personnel matter not involving any specific employees who have requested discussion of this matter in the open session, any member of this body or any elected official, the appointment of any person to fill an office of this body or of an elected official, or personnel policies that do not require the discussion of matters personnel to particular employees.
Thank you. All right, so that is our recommendation from our city clerk. What would council like to do? Councilmember Hinton?
I make a motion to make a motion to go into executive session.
Councilmember Harsberg?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Everybody gets one no once a year, okay? We just got to make
6
sure we
yes,
don't all
1
do it
no.
on the same
Councilmember
night.
Applegate voting no. Motion carried.
All right.